So, given that this audience is no doubt quite proficient at the topic of AI, your bar is even higher than it has been for the other panelists I've had yesterday and today. You're going to have to tell us something new. You're going to have to tell us something that we don't know or challenge our assumptions. So that's the bar I'm setting for you lot. Maybe we'll start with you, Luis. IDEO is renowned for pioneering design thinking, for really helping organizations think in a fresh way about the innovation process. Where do you see, on this question of designing a sustainable future, what's the contribution that you think that AI, both in its current state, but also as it's iterating very rapidly towards AGI, how can it be used in the direction of sustainability as opposed to either value neutral or unsustainable ways?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's a question that, the AI is going to have to justify its sustainable value, I think, to operate. With our clients, what we're seeing right now is that there is a very big focus on efficiency. This is the low-hanging fruit. I mean, we've built an economy on very inefficient on low commodity prices and very inefficient systems and processes. And what we are seeing is a lot of focus on trying make that work better. There's probably a 40-50% possibility of improvement some of those processes. We work with...
Just to clarify our terms, when you say efficiency, are you talking about energy efficiency or a broader definition of efficiency?
A broader definition. I mean, eventually...
Labor productivity? I mean, what are we talking about?
Yes. A combination of all of those. With H&M, which we've been working for a while, for example, the sustainability team, interestingly, started with looking at the overstock of fashion that they had, of
right.
Fun.
And it's hugely wasteful, right?
It's
End of season,
wasteful.
You have massive overstock.
By working, the sustainability team, by starting to work together with marketing, with product management, with manufacturing, with different plants, they started coming up with, we helped them develop algorithms, a predictive model for demand sensing that is able to understand basically seasonal demand much earlier, and be able to keep correcting it through the processes.
So it would manage inventory, it would reach up into the supply chain.
It would understand the customers and what they are basically
So you wouldn't over-order
for.
the dress that nobody wants
exactly.
things that fall out of fashion.
So what's interesting is that the model that we developed actually increased sales by 33% and decreased stock by 20%. So both sides. And that shows how wasteful it is, but also shows how, what I think is interesting is that how sustainability can be almost like a purposeful way to bring teams together and start sharing data that hasn't been shared in the past. I mean, it's an efficiency point, but I think that we need to take that point a little bit bigger and try and understand, okay, how do we use the data that we have in different parts of the organization to start developing businesses, basically ideas. I mean, when you started the session today, you had, what's the number one challenge that CSOs have? It's like decarbonizing business models. Where are you going to start with that? How is the sustainable team going to start with that? I don't think that today they have always the mandate to go and change the business models. Could data be a starting point to do that?
And the H&M case works to both show opportunity, not only avoided cost.
Totally.
That's the point there.
And CSRD is going to help mine an incredible amount of information from different businesses.
Right.
Both on the risk and the opportunity of sustainability. I think that's very interesting a moment for data, and it could be very interesting to start thinking about how is that going to be the basis of collaboration, not just inside an organization, but also across different organizations.
To achieve that kind of result, don't you have to mindfully design for sustainability? That is, you have to ask the question, you have to interrogate the data set, not just how can I make more profits, but rather you have to somehow build in the parameters that have sustainability metrics in mind. Am I right? And that's not always done.
It's such a great point. today, I don't know how much you go deep into how ChatGPT and these models work, but they are fine-tuned by humans to be more helpful, to be less harmful, and to be more, I think, helpful, harmful, and sorry, the third escapes me. But how can we help?
I'm deeply skeptical about all that, by the way. We'll have to see how it actually works out. But carry on.
It's a bias that the system without those tunings would be more harmful.
That I believe would be worse. Okay.
It would be worse.
I'm not reassured, but okay.
So
fine.
how can we start kind of using those prompts to develop better algorithms, better kind of results that are thinking about sustainability outcomes?
Right.
Could we, I don't know, put the SDGs inside the foundational models to start developing kind of, I don't know, just like models that are actually pushing organizations to be much more aligned with those? Should that be a constraint for the process of designing new products?
Well, that's really interesting. Now, put a pin in that. We'll come back to that if we have time, but it's a very provocative idea. I don't want to take up all our time on this. We have other panelists to get to. But keep that in mind, maybe for discussion over lunch. Rasha, let's come to you. Tell us how you see the application of AI. I think you work with digital grids, am I right?
We do.
And sort of the future of the grid and distributed energy and so on. Give us a little glimpse of how you see that AI can be applied for advancing sustainability.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, in addition to efficiency, I think we see AI as an additional tool to help us manage complexity. And there's nothing more complex than the climate system, and there's definitely nothing that I work with that's more complex than a grid. When we think about some of the choices around tripling renewables, for example, when we think about distributed renewables, so rooftop solar, distributed wind farms, you're talking about a digital grid that's going from a hub and spoke. I generate power centrally and I distribute it externally. Now I have a distributed grid. And this distributed grid is only going to get more distributed as more and more developing countries come on board. You're going to see grids of grids. That requires phenomenal amounts of digital enablement in order to keep that grid up and running and reliable. The simple algorithms that could easily transmit power from a central location out, all of a sudden increases in complexity tenfold. And AI sitting on top of some of these first principle models allow us to then manage those grids effectively and keep the grid reliability up, thereby meeting all of these goals for a typical utility. And we have multiple case studies of this. Iberdrola is an example where almost their entire grid runs on our digital grid management system, and it absolutely, from a single location, and all of that happens autonomously. And so unlike in the consumer space, in these more industrial spaces, in these critical industries, AI is actually used to handle complexity a lot more often than it is about sort of making decisions. And there, it's really about making things as autonomous as possible and removing the latency that then is introduced when you have to have an operator intervene.
So, Rasha, you're singing from a songbook that I've sung from for a long time that is arguing for a fundamental transformation in the energy system, for that centralized approach with often fossil power plants, far from consumers, lost in transmission.
Absolutely.
No feedback loops, no price signals or sort of responsiveness to a world where we have micro generators close to consumers, much more efficient, and now increasingly a world with, let's say, electric vehicles and many millions of intelligence-enabled smart meters and products that can feed back in. What I do know, having argued this for 20 years on the pages of The Economist, it has been very slow to come.
It has.
It has a lot of false starts along the way.
Absolutely.
And that also that when you introduce this kind of complexity, a lot of the legacy players, like utilities, are not so happy about it. Their earnings models are predicated on a different way of making money.
Yes.
It's also a little scary, right? When you have millions of micro generators and virtual power plants, as opposed to a big nuclear plant or a couple of coal plants or a peaker that you can turn on. It feels more like you can control it with a joystick than dealing with all this problematic distributed energy.
Right.
How do you overcome that? And where does AI provide the confidence to those to getting acceptance?
Yeah. So, yes. And it's hard to overcome that because ultimately you're overcoming a lot of sort of both rational and sort of irrational responses. One of the ways you can do that, and that's sort of one of the things we do with our customers, is you can actually model these systems before ever building and implementing them. And you can actually do reliability modeling. So you can do multiple scenarios to say, look, if I go from centrally generated to distributed, here's how it will work, and here's what happens if there's a failure here. Here is how it gets rerouted. So that upfront modeling and simulation allows us to de-risk this technology in a way that makes our customers a lot more comfortable with this new technology. We don't just do it for grids, we do it with hydrogen, we do it with CCUS, all of these sustainability pathways, these emerging technologies. The more you can give people a kind of a warm fuzzy that if something happens, you can model it and say, look, with reasonable confidence, you can manage this. And then start to do it in pilots, you do it in smaller chunks, then you can start to see that come along. But I think that's really in the developed world. I think in the developing world, they're not going to have a choice. And ultimately, once...
Do you think they're going to leapfrog?
I do. I do believe they're going to leapfrog. And I think, at least in the grid space, right? They may not leapfrog,
sure. No,
but at least in the grid space. And there, what will happen is you'll start to see these more traditional players see that it can work and then start to play catch up, as we've seen in a lot of industries. But it absolutely has been slow to come. And it's not just the utilities, it's the consumer, right? Yeah. Without the enabling mechanisms to say, look, I can connect to the grid and make money off of my solar, I may not choose to do it. I don't necessarily need self-sufficiency all the time. So I think a lot of the commitments that we've seen happen at COP28 will accelerate. I think emerging economies will accelerate. But I think the way we try and get our customers over the hump is really by actually using a lot of those same tools that we're using to manage the grid, to model and simulate the grid ahead of time before they implement anything digitally.
Now, I know that Yoann, your company has some experience in this area as well, but you've got some concrete examples of where this is in practice. Can you tell us a little bit about how you see this unfolding? And also, if you differ with her view, you see things a little bit differently, would like to hear that too.
No, thanks. And before jumping into that, I would like to remind what we do at Schneider Electric. So we are a global leading provider in energy management and industrial automation solutions. And over the last couple of years, we've been a growing technology companies, and we use AI as a key enabler for our sustainability strategy. So given the energy landscape that is changing, we consider AI as our best ally to capture the data and transform this data into concrete and sustainable actions. So over the last couple of years, we've been saving and help our customers save 550 million of tons of CO2.
But you can't attribute all that to AI, right?
No, not only, but AI is our best ally to put that at scale, because given, as you mentioned in the grid, the complexity of all the distributed energy sources that you have to cope with, having in mind that as soon as you have an impact on one energy source or one point of energy, this has a tremendous impact on all the graph of energy sources you're connected to. AI is the only way to achieve the sustainability goals. Without AI, we won't be able to cope with such amount of data, such dynamicity. So let me take an example. We think AI can really, I would say, have a massive impact and lower the environmental footprint in 3 areas. So one, which is directly reduce carbon emissions. After all, the best energy, the cleanest energy is the one we do not consume, but we do not need. And in this case, what we do is we use AI to provide solutions that allow to reduce the energy-intensive process, optimize them. So, for instance, in district heating, we do have one in Croatia where we are able to optimize when and to forecast when heating is needed for the district for 8,000 citizens, when to start and stop the heating. So we are able to implement energy optimization policies and to save as well, reduce the operational costs. So that's one example. We often have the question as well, how can you help lower or alleviate the peak demand of energy?
Right.
Because usually at peak time, this is when the energy is highly carbonated and most expensive. Thanks to the microgrid, so you mentioned the grid, but we do have a lot of microgrid players all around the world. thanks to microgrid and local point of energy production, we are able somehow to, I would say, change a bit the energy demand and reduce the peak and use smartly cleaner and less expensive energy during the peak time, really leveraging the energy that has been produced locally on the microgrid thanks to wind turbine, geothermal, all these kind of EV panels, and so on and so forth.
Now, those are both good examples. You're both obviously involved deeply in the energy system and the electricity system specifically. There is a challenge from the floor, which is in some ways the obvious one. We all know AI involves data centers. Data centers use a lot of energy. And isn't this going to be a big problem? Yep. Just to advance the conversation to something we haven't heard yet, we know the first answer that comes is that the biggest consumers of data centers are the big tech companies, Silicon Valley companies. They're also the biggest promoters of renewable energy PPAs in America, for example, and other parts of the world. In other words, they're going net zero or even net negative on carbon. So the first answer they'll give is, well, renewable energy is going to solve the problem. But then when we extrapolate AI growth, so this is the question to push beyond the first answer. What's the next answer? And Sam Altman says we need trillions of dollars invested in energy. We need fusion. That's the only solution according to an AI visionary.
But that's
short of fusion, what's your answer?
Yeah, that's the usual question that we got. And specialized in AI, we always ask ourselves, does AI bring more efficiency at what it costs?
Sure.
Okay, that's one given point.
Right.
Then if you consider the growing demand of AI in data centers, and we are lucky to use data centers, but we are lucky as well at Schneider to provide data centers with solutions, turnkey solutions. So the question is, with a growing demand, there will be a growing supply. So just to supply this energy, we need renewable. We will need some greener energy, for sure. The problem is this greener energy, this renewable energy is somehow considered as less reliable. And to provide the energy for demand, you need to be 100% reliable. And we believe here, in that specific space, we are working hand in hand with the data center providers to provide more reliable system, predictable system, with AI techniques, with sophisticated clubbing, generative AI, and traditional AI to make sure that the mix of energy that is supplied for the data center is coming from greener energy. So this is
are you looking to link it with energy storage, for example, so that you can have that 24/7 reliability?
Absolutely.
Right, but it sounds like there's no getting around the fact that we're going to need a lot more zero carbon energy to feed these data centers.
Will be becoming more and more electric, and we truly believe that we have a really great impact to have on that journey, and we feel ready to be privileged to be able to work on that all together, hand in hand, to provide the demand that is increasing.
And Vijay, if I might add as well.
Yeah.
We are also, we work with in a slightly different space just because we don't provide hardware or services, but we work with all of the big players to help them optimize their overall data center system. So how do they they model their data centers using a lot of our software, and then they look at how can they use waste heat? How can they use energy storage across multiple data centers? And so I think, again, I agree. I think it's the use of AI helps other systems, but a lot of those players are also using AI to better optimize their own operations.
Right.
And they use so for example, our hybrid models are AI enabled, and they'll use those to help model their entire system and figure out how to best optimize those data centers. So it's not like we're going to stop using data centers. The issue is how do you then make them as energy efficient as possible and as close to net zero as they can get before you have to, So
it seems to be the honest answer is there are trade-offs, or it's a sort of a dual impact, right? On one hand, it is going to use a lot more energy. That puts an additional call on renewables that can't be used in my electric car or for my house, right? So we need to expand the scope and scale of low carbon energy to feed the beast. And therefore, the impetus is on the industry to show extraordinary gains. That is, you're applying it more effectively so that investment is worthwhile. The diversion of renewables to data centers and AI should act as a force multiplier across industries. Then you'll have a license to operate. Otherwise, the critics will be right. The question from the floor would be correct.
That's right.
In that, let's turn to a specific example. Reckitt, a well-known company. How are you looking at the application of AI in whether it's product design or how you think about customers, if I may ask Fabrice?
Yeah, sure. So Reckitt, consumer goods company, we operate in hygiene and consumer health. We sell 30 million products every day. all over the world, and we solve daily problems, removing a headache, removing a stain, killing a virus. It's fair to say that probably everyone in the room uses one of our brands at least: Vanish, Nurofen, Finish, and Dettol. The reality that we are facing as a consumer goods business is that people want brands to become more sustainable, so they expect brands to do a little bit more than just sell their stuff. They will want programs of impact around biodiversity, water, whatever makes sense for a particular brand. But to answer your question, they really want more sustainable product design. Some will want less plastic, recycled plastic, greener chemistry, less chemistry, or lower CO2 emissions. Would you
Are they ready
agree?
to pay for it yet?
Huh?
Are customers willing to pay?
You kind of stole my act. I was going to ask, who wants these things in the audience?
Well, of
who
course,
wants
we
what
all
I've just
do.
described?
Yeah.
Now keep your hand up if you're ready to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, see, this is a
This is
special
not a good
audience. You know.
audience for that.
That's not.
This is not a
so
good
They're
this is-
spending 2 days talking about sustainability. This is a very special crowd.
Maybe there's a little bias in
Yeah, a
your
little
sample. Yeah. But I can tell you that in general, the markets don't want to pay for it. Why
Right.
should they? And most people also don't really want to change their routine with a daily product. So take a surface cleaner. Not everyone will want to refill it to lower the plastic footprint. That's where AI comes in. Because we are now able to merge data sets of very different nature, unstructured data, make sense of that data, and use other algorithms to really understand what group of consumers want what. So that's the insight part, if you want. Understand what people want in terms of sustainable offer. Then we use AI to Luis's point, to design for it. It can
But just
help.
in that example, if I'm one of those lazy, uncaring sods who doesn't want to replace...
Not my words, not my words.
No, I know. The effort of using refillable jugs to clean my surface. Your AI will identify me as an unlikely target and instead target the recyclable product to someone else. Let's say our friend here who was very green and will do it. But it won't change my behavior. You're not trying to do that.
So what you say is right for advertising. I'm just talking about understanding a market.
Right.
And there may be a group of people who's ready to use a very different product with a different price. And maybe there may be 3 other groups who are happy with recycled material or something a little bit different, but not entirely. But the data and machine learning applied to that data helps you think about your offerings and what you need to manufacture to cover the aspirations of everybody. That's the big change that AI enables from a strategic perspective.
Right.
Then you manufacture accordingly.
Right. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. I'm going to ask for a couple of questions from the floor. I see a hand way up in the back, going up quickly. Let's get a question there. And one more question. I'll get the microphone here, too. We'll do a lightning round. We'll take both questions, and we'll get some answers from the panelists, because we're a little short on time. Please identify yourself in the back.
Hi, I'm Eric Reyes. I come from the ESSEC School of Management. My question is indirectly for Reckitt specifically. It is quite coincidental because actually my first job was at Reckitt. And, and I can tell you that one of the reasons why I was not so pleased with it is because of a conversation that regards something like this, because I would ask you exactly what is the point of artificial intelligence, which is still relatively in early stages of development for all of these solutions that you're providing, when Reckitt just last year was one of the main consumers of palm oil in the world with 140,000 tons bought for all your products, regardless of how sustainable you say that you buy it from Wilmar, and which is one of the most damaging.
So the question is palm oil. Is that the point of the comment?
No. Like I need to give all this preamble, all of this like disclosure to explain what is the purpose of finding AI solutions when you're really targeting consumers that are families. That the point of increasing prices is not for them. It's about a company that has such big profit and big margins that can afford to create better solutions. So what is the purpose of it, of AI, when you have a lot of other things that you could be doing better, in my opinion?
All right. I think we get the point there. Let's go to this question here. We'll take both and come to the the panel. There's a microphone coming to you, sir. Just give a moment. No, they'll be there in a second. We want people to be able to hear you. There you go.
I've got quite a loud voice, but that's better. My name's Stephen Clapham. My company's called Behind the Balance Sheet. I'd like to ask the panelists, how much are you going to be spending in 2024 on AI? And at what point do you think AI will actually be a benefit to the profitability of your business? Presumably it'll be a cost for a while, but when do you think it will be a net benefit? Thank you.
Okay. All right. So we've got a couple of questions. Since we had a question directed at you, I think I'll give you the first chance to respond, but I welcome responses from all my panelists.
Sure. Well, thanks for the question. I don't think we have to choose between working responsibly with the supply chain and helping farmers with livelihood, and using AI to do many other things. So it's an and for me. And to connect with the second question, the amount of money invested, is increasing. The productivity that it generates is obvious, but also increasingly it helps us drive more growth. And I think that's the key point. As you drive growth, you drive volumes, and as you drive volumes, you are also able to bring a lot of positive impact into your supply chain.
So from your perspective, yeah, you see that you can do both. I would point out the questioner highlights a point that all advocates of AI and sustainability are going to have to answer, and that is it might be an enabler, but what is it enabling? So that the scrutiny on all behavior on sustainability will not go away because AI enhances efficiency of certain things. So in that case, it was palm oil that was called out. For other companies, there'll be other challenges that they have to work out. AI is not a quick fix on any of these things. As I say, it's either a force multiplier or something that can help you accelerate processes, do things better. But fundamental questions, I don't believe it can solve. But I leave that challenge for people in the room to figure out.
Yeah,
please, Carrie.
and I would exactly echo that. Just to the question on investment in AI. So we invest in AI in multiple places, both in terms of internal productivity, but also in terms of how we can embed AI into our products to help our customers. So in terms of internal productivity of multiple use cases, where we're using AI to help coders code, quality assurance to do a better job of getting the best code out the door the first time. And so there we see immediate benefits. The productivity is almost immediate when we start to use AI, and the return on that investment is all in terms of our ability to more effectively do the work. When we come to embed AI into our products, to your point, there is no silver bullet. We still use the guardrails of physics and chemistry, like the laws of physics still have to hold when you use AI. So we use those because we serve industrial customers. The concept of safety, reliability, efficacy all has to be there. And so we use AI very selectively in use cases where that use case will provide a better outcome for our customers. And there we've been doing that since the 80s, and we've seen numerous benefits. So we see it on both sides, both in terms of productivity enhancements, but also in terms of product enhancements that then deliver value for our customers that then contribute to our top and bottom line.
30 seconds. Final word.
There is a slow of regulation that's coming. The Data Act happening for smart devices, the right to repair, all these different things are happening at the same time as AI is coming. They are super data intensive. Mm-hmm. They are allowing, I think, sustainability in general kind of products to be rethought and redeveloped. This is what we are seeing from our clients, our customers. They are really investing in that combination of accelerating regulation, AI, and human centricity, developing great products at the center of all that.
So there's a real perfect storm coming, but AI companies are hoping anyway, will help navigate that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, very good. I think you got a good look into the future. I think we can give a nice round of applause to our panelists. Thank you. I invite you to come this way.